time we're flipping the script. It's we go from men's basketball to women's basketball, and we have DeShawn Johnson, who covered the women's team for the 2023-24 season.
Yep.
First of all, how was South Carolina? How was that?
Oh, man, the experience was awesome. Like I've just been telling everybody, I mean, that's my first time doing like a big travel thing for any type of reporting experience. So it was just awesome to go. Obviously, this was my first time in South Carolina as well. So I've seen a lot of different things, and just the setup they had there for March Madness, it's an experience that I've never seen anything like before.
That's crazy. And that's awesome. And I'm really happy that you're back.
Oh, yeah.
I guess, like, if I were you, maybe, I don't know if I'd want to be back. Like, and just keep reliving those 3 days over and over and over again. So, MSU women's basketball, I don't know that we saw this coming. 22-9.
Yep.
Number 4 in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Number 9 seed in the tournament. Lost to North Carolina in the first round. Now, I want to ask something, actually, for someone that's not necessarily as equipped with knowledge about women's basketball.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just going to compare MSU's men's team.
Okay.
20-15, right?
Mm.
So they play more games, I imagine, than the women's team.
Yeah.
And, like, so then they were also 7th in the Big Ten, right? And Michigan State's 4th in the Big Ten at 22-9.
Yeah.
But they're both 9 seeds.
Yeah.
So, like, what, like, I guess give me the why.
So, I mean, the way that I kind of seen it break down for the women's team, I think they get put at the 9 seed just because of the tough losses they had to the teams that were better than them ranking wise as far as net rankings go when it comes to the picking for the tournament.
But if they lose to a team that's better than them in the net, isn't that a good thing? Like, I mean, I'm not saying losing is good.
Yeah.
But theoretically, it's a better loss than losing to a team that's worse than them.
It definitely is. I think that what the problem when it comes to, though, is that, like, you just, like, I feel like you have to win one of those games when it comes to, like, just, like, playing against teams that are better than you in the net rankings. You have to have one of the wins that is kind of, like, you know, like, when I was checking for kind of, like, when I was just looking into bracketology and seeing where they were going to land for this year, you know, obviously, and I know you're kind of big into bracketology. You see the different games that, like, they show that are kind of the big ones. You know, we talked about this on the pod a little bit before of a little bit of skill point rankings when it comes to college basketball and how that ranking goes. So, you know, like, you know, the tough loss to Iowa, to Indiana, to Ohio State, you see that all those teams are better than Michigan State in the net rankings, and that they, even though they were close wins, would give them a little bit of bonus there. They weren't able to get over the hill in any of those games. So I think it ultimately hurts them in the long run.
Interesting. And, yeah, because it seemed like I said, it seemed like they've had a good season.
Yeah,
right?
no, definitely.
And 9 losses is not bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I guess that's my thing is I'm like 9 seed. Like, it seems like they should be playing, like, you know, a little bit higher. Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm not the expert, but you are. So do you think that the committee judged them fairly?
I want to say that it was pretty fair. Like, I mean, like, I think the biggest, like, kind of flag that was raised is that Michigan also got a 9 seed when getting into the tournament, and they did not play as well as the Spartans throughout the entire year. But I think another part that kind of hurt the Spartans was the losing streak at the end of the year. They dropped quite a few games. While Michigan, I don't exactly remember how they finished off, but I know they was on the positive end. While you kind of see that Michigan State, although, you know, big ranking in the Big Ten tournament, you know, but you kind of lose a couple games straight, and then the loss in the Big Ten tournament to Nebraska. I think when you factor it all in, it's just like, I mean, like, they definitely took some losses at the end of the year that I would say was a fair ranking for the most part.
So then, I guess as far as the season overall,
yeah,
like, how much of a, like, start with the expectation, and I guess take me through the whole season to, like, where, like, you know, they started off, well, like, how did they start? Did they start off pretty good?
Yeah, I mean, so just to give you a little bit on the expectations, I mean, I think that coming into the season, you know, you had a lot of new things going on, and I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but obviously head coach Robyn Fralick was the biggest thing. But I think that the great thing about that signing, and, like, the thing that wasn't so discouraging about having a new head coach, was just the resume that she had been coming in with. I mean, she MAC Coach of the Year, multiple tournament or end of the year tournament appearances. Fralick had a lot going on at the time, so I think that, of course, you had a lot to think about, but you start the first couple of games. I think they went on a 4-game winning streak to start the year. You go to the Cherokee Invitational and you lose your first game, but in those first couple of games, you're scoring 80, 90. I think at the very beginning of the year, they were averaging 92 points through 4 or 5 games. So it was clear that there was a big offensive input. It was clear that this team was performing on a different level than they had the year prior in just 4 or 5 games. You hit the middle of the year, and I think this is when the team kind of really realized that there was something going on with this team, that it could be a lot more than anybody kind of expected them to be. I don't exactly remember where they are in the record at this point, but they had only lost 2 or 3 times, and the toughest loss that they had at that point was to Nebraska. That's the Big Ten opener, and I mentioned this on the podcast earlier in the year too. No disrespect to any of the teams that the Spartans are playing, but it's when you get into Big Ten play is when things really start to get a little bit serious. You start to get really to the midst of the season. So they did lose the game there, but after that there was like a little bit of a streakiness for the Spartans. It's a win-loss, 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 win 4 or 5 straight, lose a tough game like one of these Ohio State, Iowa games, win another 4 straight, lose, and then they had that period at the end of the year where they lost quite a few games. But like just to play off the expectations, I think that at first it was just a little bit of a who knows at this point. And I mean that for fans, I mean that for the coaching staff and for the players. Of course, you're going to be all bought in and you're going to have to give everything you got, but you don't know what's going to happen this year. But midway through the year, I think everyone has started to get a grasp on this team really had something going for it, and they could make a run if they wanted to. I mean, everybody on the roster at this point was talking about it. So the expectations quickly started to rise for the team. And by the time they made it to the postseason, there was kind of like this narrative that they're playing with house money a little bit, if you will, just because, the low expectations, you didn't expect to be here. You got a lot going on that's going to continue to build the program just with this new coaching staff coming in. And then you get your spot. You get a 9 seed in the tournament. You're a high seed in the Big Ten tournament. That only creates a little bit more attention that you're going to want to bring into Michigan State's program. That adds to your resume and what you can bring in for the oncoming years. So ultimately, it was a huge expectation lift for sure.
And then, what is Robyn Fralick doing recruiting-wise?
So I was just looking at this, and I got it up here on my phone here. We can talk about this a little bit more, but the one thing that I think the Spartans really realized from the from the North Carolina game throughout the different game against teams like Nebraska is that there's just a little bit of a size disparity going on there. Mm-hmm. There's a great story with Michigan State's basketball team, or Michigan State's women's basketball team, with Julia Ayrault and her playing the center position as a point guard this year. She's played point guard all her life. And yet she's second.
And she's able to play the 5.
Oh, she's playing it incredibly. She's top 5 in blocks in the Big Ten, number 8 in rebounds. She's doing an incredible showing. It's just the disparity is not on her. It's the fact that when Julia has to take a break, they don't really have anywhere else to go. So I was just taking a look here right before we started the pod, and there's been a confirmed 4 different signings for the Spartans. And it gets me really excited to see what they potentially could do. So I don't know too much about each of these prospects, but I can give you just a little bit about them. There's 4 different confirmed signings that we already had, and these were announced a couple months ago. But there's one, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, but I think it's Sotelo Miguez. She's a 6'3" and she's a native of Spain. She's currently playing in an overseas league, and just looking at some of the things that they have about her just on Michigan State's scouting website that they have up there, she's got some serious game. She's playing with, we've heard about what overseas basketball can be like. She's playing with a lot of older competition that is a lot more physical, a lot more just, get serious now. So seeing that transition would be definitely a fun new thing for the Michigan State Spartans, especially when I mentioned that size disparity they have. 2 more forwards coming in, one at, I believe she's 6'1", and another one at 6 foot. Both of them, one of them coming out of Ohio, one of them coming out of Indiana. Like I said, there's still not too much to be known about them now, but they're having pretty good high school seasons, and they're both depth to the size disparity that we keep mentioning. And then Fralick also mentioned, and this is the cool thing, is that 2 of these signees coming out of Ohio, one of them coming out of Toledo, Ohio. Her name is, I believe it is, Sinai Douglas, and she's a point guard coming out of Toledo, Ohio. And so far, they have a little bit more about details on her on Michigan State's website, but what she's been doing in her senior year has been pretty amazing down there in Toledo, Ohio. I don't know exactly what the competition's looking like, but she's averaging well in the 14, 15 points per game area, and it just seems like she has a lot of different type of gameplay that the Michigan State Spartans could need at the guard position. You're going to have Didi moving up into a big veteran position, but you're losing a lot of guard play in this upcoming year with losing out on Tori Osman and Mo Joyner, a lot of veteran guard play. So you got a little bit there to play with. I mean, four signees that seem that they could bring a lot to Michigan State's roster next year, which is going to be continuing to be a strong but still rebuilding process, as there are still a lot of new faces and then more faces leaving the team as of next year.
And so I guess it's because I know Michigan State, like almost, it's like the men's and women's teams have almost like had a complete like flip. Like it's like the opposite narrative, right? Yeah. Like with the men's team, you had a ton of expectation entering the year. A lot of that, was partially because they were hyped with the recruiting class, and a lot of things didn't pan out the way they wanted them to, and so there was a bit of a rocky road. With the women's team, it was very much like they like had lower expectations. Obviously, you're going to be rebuilding a program, building it with a new coach. You're doing it. You're kind of laying the groundwork for the future. And we didn't really know what to expect. We just knew that Fralick had a great history, or resume. Right. She was at Bowling Green. She did great things there, and she built that program pretty good. Yeah. And so like she comes to MSU, and she kind of there's like hope for the future. And so I think that it's very interesting to see that sort of disparity, or not disparity, but like contrast between the men's and women's teams. And so, like, going forward into the future, like, what do you think the expectations are going to be for next season? Do they have to, like, if they don't make the NCAA tournament, is that going to be, like, a failure? Or, like, how are we going to, like, identify the tangible, like, growth for the team?
I think that's definitely, like, a bit of a funny question because, like, I mean, like, you don't want to take this year and, like, completely blow it out of proportion and, like, say this is the new standard. However, there is a certain level of it to where, like, it should be the standard for this team going forward. Like, Michigan State's women's basketball program, a while hasn't got the exact exposure that the men's team has gotten. They've had some decent runs in the past decade or so, and, you want to continue to see that coming from a school that prioritizes basketball programs, So, Fralick, obviously, like I said, I mean, a huge resume, multiple tournament appearances, her record at Bowling Green State, 31, I think coming off a 31 win record. It's obviously what she's capable of is amazing. So I obviously their expectations that they had coming into this season, it's not going to be anything like that next year. It's definitely going to be like, like we're expecting a lot out of this program, but I think that it should also just still be remembered that, like I just mentioned, they're still in the midst of a rebuild process. Like, coming into this year, that was kind of the idea, and although that, they showed that they could have a great year, there has to be a little bit of remembrance that Mo Joyner, she did just play her last game as a Michigan State Spartan. Tori Osman just played her last game as a Michigan State Spartan. And, I mean, they had both been in the program for 4 years apiece. So, like those are key factors that are being lost. And as a coach, that is just getting there, you definitely have to do things to make sure that you rebuild that in the right way. You don't want to, like I said, two of these prospects are coming out of Ohio, and you don't want it to, as a coach, you don't want it to just be like, oh, I'm just bringing in more people from Ohio. It has to be a slow blend. So, it's going to be a process for them. But I think, to me, like, the expectations are going to be at least a better record than what we've seen previously to this year. I don't know if 22 wins is going to be the exact goal point, but I do expect to see 16, 17 wins, another, a positive record within the Big Ten Conference. I definitely think that this team is here to stay, at least at a certain record or a level of where they were this year.
That's crazy, and we're looking forward to it because I think it's awesome when you have like both the men's and women's program that are like really making moves.
Right.